Happy Bitcoin Tuesday, freaks. It's your host, Odell, here for another Citadel Dispatch, the show focused on actionable freedom tech and Bitcoin discussion. As always, Dispatch is a interactive live show with no ads or sponsors. It is purely funded by our wonderful audience. So a huge shout out to all the freaks who continue to support the show with Bitcoin. Easiest way is to go to citadeldispatch.com or citadeldispatch.com/donate. You can donate with on-chain Bitcoin or Lightning. You can also support the show via podcasting 2.0 apps such as Fountain or Breeze. Those apps work just like a regular podcasting app. Search Citadel Dispatch, press the subscribe button. But you can load up your wallet with Bitcoin, and you can choose how much Bitcoin per minute you think the show is worth. That Bitcoin gets sent directly to my node. Gives me that warm, fuzzy feeling that you guys care about the content. And also gives me sats that I can spend at a later date. So thank you all for continuing to contribute. Part of Podcasting 2.0 is a feature called Boostergrams. Boostergrams allow you to attach a message to a stack of sats that you send to the show. I read the top 4 boostergrams from the last episode every episode, ranked by sats. We have at Sawzal with 100,000 sats saying, as with most things, I couldn't more strongly agree with Matt in saying, this was a fucking awesome conversation, gents. Thanks, Adam, Jack, and Matt, for your time and dedication towards helping the next billion adopt the best money. Open source stage was lit. Hope to visit Bitcoin Park someday. And until then, we'll stay humble and stack sats. Great advice. We have at Eric99 with 50,000 sats saying, stay humble, stack sats. Thank you, Eric. Great advice. We have at Ape Mythrander with 21,000 sats saying, hashtag, we're still early. Every good meme is based in reality. We are early. And we have at Scarce City with 21,000 sats, pre-boosting because I will be listening to this on a plane and not streaming sats. Value for value. Thank you for the pre-boost. Thank you to all the freaks who continue to support the show. As always, Dispatch is streamed live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Bitcoin TV. Joining us live is also a great way to support the show. We have a unique live interactive chat where we get to participate directly with the guests as we're on air. So that's a great way to join us. And
Thank you for the pre-boost. Thank you to all the freaks who continue to support the show.
I just heard that echo, Justin. But before you're good. I just lost my train of thought. We're streamed on all the platforms. Go to citadeldispatch.com. Share with your friends and family. I know it's a recession. I know it's a bear market. If you can't spare sats, just subscribing and sharing it is a huge boost to the show, and I do appreciate it. So with all that said, we have a very unique guest on today. We're going to be jumping into a slightly different topic than we're probably used to here. It's a topic that I want to talk about a lot more, which is guns and which is firearm culture in America in general. We have Fenix Ammunition here. I guess his actual name is Justin. I know him by his company's name and his Twitter handle, which is Fenix Ammunition. They are a small business ammo manufacturer out of Michigan that accepts Bitcoin using BTCPayServer. And it's an honor and a privilege to have Justin join us. How's it going, Justin?
Oh, hey, thanks for having me. The pleasure's mine. And yeah, that's a pretty fair introduction. We're Fenix Ammunition. We're a small business about 25 minutes northwest of Detroit. I'm the CEO. I work with my brother, who's the vice president. We have 5 other employees, and we make ammunition for the militia industrial complex. So that we're not something I made up, but a phrase I've really come to enjoy. We're sort of become famous because we have our focus completely on the civilian market. We're really not interested in doing business with military or police. And, some people really like that. Some people don't. But in any case, it gets people thinking. So we're happy to play our little role in this very large industry.
Well, I have to say, you make a great fucking product.
Thank you.
And I appreciate that you can ship it to me directly, that you do ship it to me directly for Bitcoin. But I would appreciate it even if I had to pay dollars for it. Your product specifically has this, it's a special relationship you have with consumers because the thing is blowing up in my face. Like I'm really counting on it to work. It's not some like chintzy fiat product. But I mean, to get started here, Justin, I'm kind of curious. I Do you have any competition? Like, are there other direct to consumer ammo manufacturers in America that I can just like go to their website and just have it shipped to my house?
Sure. Yeah, there are. I would say of companies our size, many don't really go the route of web sales as their primary method of distribution. So, like us, for example, when we were first getting started, we just didn't have the brand recognition, the web traffic to make that sustainable. So, we sold mostly at gun shows. We sold to the local ranges. Pretty much anybody who we could sell to, that's who we were going to sell to. And my goal was always to generate enough interest, build an email list, get web traffic, build a brand that eventually we could stop doing those things because uh, those were dependent on the amount of hours that I could spend out selling. And so it's just not really scalable in the long term. And so I knew that right away. And I also knew that most of our competitors in the industry were happy to be in that business model and weren't really interested in changing. And myself being a little bit younger coming into this industry than many others, I would say that kind of gave me an advantage because I felt like I could see something that they were missing. And so to me, I thought, would I rather be at a gun show all day and deal with the customer in that sort of a format, or would I rather do it indirectly via email, which I can do from anywhere, right? And I'm not limited to Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then try to knock on doors of these ranges. And there's a limited number of those anyway. So even if I can generate a lot of volume, uh, it's just not really what I wanted to do in the long run.
Yeah, no, that makes sense to me. Um, I
But I guess to answer your question, I kind of went off there a bit. There are definitely some brands that have recognition as being more of an online seller. I would say our brand is a bit unique in that we are more or less have said we're not interested at all in doing business with really anybody outside of the civilian market. And here are our reasons why. And so I don't think there's anybody that can say they've taken that sort of unique niche within the niche, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, you're very outspoken to say the least. Yeah, I guess my question was more, um, I don't know. It's a very interesting model. It's a model that I would like to see more of just across American society. Maybe not even just in the firearm industry, but it also seems very unique in the within the industry. And I even like
Mm-hmm.
you don't sell like little boxes of ammo.
Right.
You sell like the big bags.
Bags.
Which is,
Right.
like,
Yep.
ridiculous.
Bulk.
Like, why
Right.
would I ever
Yeah.
wanna buy rounds in, like, 50-round boxes and then I have to open
Right.
all the boxes just to store them
Right.
or move them around? It makes no fucking
Yeah.
sense.
It generates a ton of waste. And it just takes time to take everything out of these boxes, which end up going in the trash anyway. And frankly, I just looked at it and I said, especially on the internet where you're going to have to pay shipping to some degree, and shipping's built into the cost. Put it that way. You might not be
Right.
billed for it, but it's there someplace. It's being accounted for, to be sure. So really, who buys 2 boxes of ammo and then pays $15 to have it shipped? I mean, unless it's some really specialty round that you just can't get anywhere, it's just very uncommon. And right in to the beginning of the business, so we got a quick story of kind of how that also came to be. We got started right before the 2016 election. And so, everybody knew Hillary was going to win. And so the world, like everybody was freaking out. The gun shows were packed. People were kind of going crazy a little bit, not quite to the degree that they did during COVID, but pretty crazy. So things are going okay. And then, Trump wins and everyone's like, holy shit, like I can't believe that actually happened. And then everybody kind of panicked in the gun industry because all of a sudden it's like, well, this guy's not going to pass any kind of gun control. He seems to be this like MAGA super like patriot on steroids guy. So we don't have anything to worry about. And so all of a sudden all that business dries up. And also, gun shows tend to taper off in the summer anyway, because who the hell wants to be inside at a fucking gun show when you could be outside shooting or doing literally anything else. So that started to dry up, and I thought, oh man, we better figure something out. I don't know what to do because we don't have near enough web traffic to let that have any percentage of our real sales. The gun stores now are going to become very price conscious because there's going to be this glut of ammo, and they're going to try to work us down. They already do that anyway, so that's not sustainable in the long run. I don't really want to do that. So where do we go? A friend of mine invited me to a 3-gun competition. It was like March, I think. So it was absolutely freezing cold. But I literally packed my trunk full of ammo, went up there and tried to sell it to these competitive shooters. And that's where I started to understand what they wanted. They wanted something that was low recoil with a heavy grain bullet so that you can still knock over steel plates if you don't hit them toward the center, things like that. And I said, okay, well, here's a niche. And they're willing to pay a little more for it because it's not something that you can go buy the day before at Walmart if there's ammo available. It's just not going to be there. So, all right, now we can find a niche where we don't have to rely on cents per round. These guys are interested in performance, and they're willing to pay a little more for a more quality product. And so if we can find a way to do that, then I think we've got something here. And, oh, by the way, the round count for this match was like 200 rounds. And some of these guys are shooting another match the next day, and then they were going to shoot 250 rounds during the week to practice or whatever. And I thought, okay, this is what I want. It's great to sell ammo at a gun show to some guy who's storing it in his basement for the end of the world.
Right.
And these guys are doing that too, but they're also consuming product on a constant basis, right? There's turnover. And so I thought, all right, this is where, let me investigate this niche more and figure it out. And so then I started getting into competitive shooting myself as another hobby. And part of that was to do some soft marketing. You're on a squad with 10, 12 guys, and, oh, you're the guy who owns Fenix ammunition. Yeah, that's me. Okay. And then they see me shooting. And so it was an encouragement for me to get better at it. For one thing, it has vastly, dramatically improved my pistol craft, my rifle work, all those things. So I got all those side benefits. I could be at the range, developing skills in something that I personally wanted to be better at anyway. But in the meantime, I'm interacting with this customer base. Right. They can see the product works because I'm getting better at it. They can see that I'm not having any failures. They can see it put their hands on it. And that's how I'm going to start to build this from the grassroots. And so in any case, then that's kind of what led to the packaging. All right, well, everybody here is got all these 50-round boxes. There's all this trash. They're hauling away bags and bags of empty cardboard boxes and plastic trays. And then, over a couple of years, as we started to develop more of our sales through the website, you start to get analytical data, and you look and you say, okay, my average order is 500 rounds of something. That's about the average, and the average cart is this many dollars. That equates to about 500 rounds. So why don't we do everything in increments of 250? And that way people can just get how much they want. We can structure our pricing to work better that way. The more you buy, the more you save. All these
I love that.
Like, I don't have to work
pricing.
Sure, you don't have to generate a bunch of coupon codes and then deal with, hey, this coupon code expired. Will you still honor it? Hey, I put my order in last week, and now you're doing this July 4th sale. That's bullshit. I want the 10%. Okay, like, I guess I'll give it to you anyway. Because I want the revenue. So it just eliminated all that, a lot less work on my part, and it's easier from a packaging perspective. Having automated equipment to put all of those cartridges into a tray is expensive, or it has to be done by hand. And so do I pay somebody to manually put all these rounds into these boxes face up and slide them in the box and do all this shit? Or do we eventually get to the point where I can try to automate? And that's where we are now. So we have an automated bagging machine that after the ammunition comes out of our automated quality control equipment, it gets fed down a conveyor. It counts out 250 rounds at a time. It's extremely accurate. It's much more accurate than the weighing systems that we were using before. So it's, plus or minus 1 round and almost never that. Opens up the bag, seals it. We can print the information right on the bag. So, the packaging the packaging is going to end up in the trash. Put the money in the product. Don't put the money in the packaging, right? And people, I think, can see that that's a better use of their dollars. That's what I was thinking. And all of this are things that I could see as a consumer, right? Having been a
Yeah, it seems
consumer.
really basic.
Exactly. It seemed basic to me. And so I was thinking to myself, man, this is like such a pain in the ass having to take all this ammo out of these boxes. I go home and I take them all out. I dump it into like a 50 cal ammo can.
Exactly.
And now I got to now, the trash guy comes and he's like, fuck, man, this guy's got this. He's got like a entire 50-gallon trash bag full of empty ammo boxes. Okay, now that's like not so good for operational security, right? Now
Yeah, you
your
buy like a
neighbors.
case. You buy a case of 1,000 rounds, and it's like you have 20 boxes and 20 little plastic things, and then it's not even.
Yeah.
It's the company is loading them all into. They're spending time
Correct.
to do it just
Right.
for you to spend time to remove it. It's just a
Unloading
pain in
it.
the ass.
That's so stupid, right? Yeah. So
Yeah,
that's
so
kind of how.
that makes a lot of sense to me. I think that is cool. That I think that you just understood the consumer, right? Like that
Yeah.
is. And then the idea of the scaling the prices with adding, you buy more, you save more, right?
Right.
And like that's just a very obvious incentive match between the user and you guys.
Yeah. Makes sense to me.
Yeah, no, I think you hit that right on the head. And it's such a simple thing. There's a hardware wallet manufacturer in Bitcoin that's called Cold Card. I don't know if you're aware
Yeah.
of them,
I've heard of them. Yep. I've heard of
but
Cold
like
Card.
they do not the same thing because it's a little bit of different situation. But like all the competitors have like these fancy boxes and stuff, and like they ship it in a
Right.
sealed bag, right? They're like,
That's perfect. Right.
you're just gonna open it anyway. Let's just save everyone time and money on both sides of the equation, right? And just ship it
Yep.
in a bag. And then I think the other thing to unpack there with your answer is something that I think you focused in on pretty quickly. I'm trying not to fanboy too much here. Thank you for coming on the show.
It's no problem at all, man. Honestly.
Is that there's a whole branch of the industry that is straight sats per round or cents per round, right?
Yep.
Like how cheap can I get my round for? And like that's all they care about. There's ammo seek, like there's websites that are just strictly focused on people trying to get the lowest price for the round. But you honed in on this idea that there's a whole quiet group, I think, that is completely price insensitive. Like if you rip us off, like I'm going to stop buying ammo from you.
Certainly.
But like I'm not that sensitive on exactly the price. It doesn't have to be the cheapest round possible. Like I want something dependable. Like like I said, it's blowing up in my face by design. Like I need it to be dependable, whether that's competition, whether that's defense, whatever the situation is. And you realize that there's a price insensitivity there. You don't have to just drive the margins all the way down to zero and everybody wins.
Yeah. So I thought I could do two things in this industry, and that's kind of why I do just about everything I do. The first is, as you said, most of the industry has trained the consumer to look at only cents per round, and AmmoSeek is like the worst at that. But they're the worst, but they weren't the first. So I looked at getting listed on AmmoSeek one time, and basically as an ammo company, you have to pay a monthly fee to even be appearing on their listings. And so that actually, again, as a consumer having come into the industry, I always thought, well, this guy's just like an aggregator, right? He's just running it's just pulling everything off the internet. Well, no, that's not true. You're only getting the things that people are paying to be exposed to. So you as a consumer may think that this search engine is not biased, but it is. You're not seeing even somebody who has a lower price but doesn't pay their fucking ransom, the protection money that AmmoSeek, hey bro, you got a nice ammo company.
I didn't know that.
It's a shame if if you had no web traffic. And it's like, well, man, fuck you guys. I'm not playing that game. And I looked at it and I just said, look, if you're not on the first page, you're never going to get seen. Everybody knows that. Again, analytics, this is how the internet works. You got to be in the top 3 or 5 on. And if you're not on the first page, you basically don't exist. That's just how the industry has trained consumers. So we were never going to be able to compete with those kinds of margins. We didn't have the economies of scale, didn't have the capital. This business was entirely self-funded by me. So I didn't have access to $5 to $10 million to develop a bunch of high speed equipment right away, and leverage being able to buy 50 million primers at a time. You know, I had to buy from middlemen, so my margins were already thinner than everyone else's anyway. So I can't compete on that. Okay, so what can I do? I can make a better product. Well, who's going to care about a better product, right? Most of the consumer base sees it as consumable. I mean, if you go to an indoor range, and I've seen this many times, you have a mostly uneducated, untrained consumer who's renting a handgun for an hour. They're going to shoot 100 rounds into a piece of paper at 5 yards. They have literally no idea what they're doing. They're not training anything. They're not developing any skill. They might as well honestly have dry fired in their living room, and they would have gotten way more out of it. So if they have a quote jam, right, they don't really know what it was or why it happened, or they don't really care about it. What do? They get the round out of there somehow. They put the gun down on the table. They do some fucking shit that you're looking over at the bay, from the bay next to you, thinking, Jesus Christ, is this guy about to point this gun at my head? Like, what in the fuck is he doing? And they dropped around on the floor and they don't care, right? And when they bought the ammo, the guy at the range counter sold them the cheapest stuff that they had. So that's not my market. So where is my market? It's these people who are doing what I saw as important things, people who are taking real training classes, right? With somebody like Haley Strategic, Warrior Poet Society, Cogworks, like these brand name like companies where they're going to go through 1,000 rounds over 2 days. And these people are serious about their craft. Like I have a lot of experience as an athlete. I wrestled in college. I'm a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. So I've spent a lot of time around like very high level athletes. And so that's the way that I looked at the gun community. The guys who are Grandmaster USPSA shooters. I mean, you can say what you want about it, but like watch Garand Thumb shoot. Okay. That guy is like a world-class shooter. There's no doubt about it. I mean, you say what you will, like that's just a simple fact. And you don't get that way without a lot of practice and understanding of basics and fundamentals, and just drilling reps, working on your footwork, your presentations, sight picture, all these things. And to me, like that's what I wanted to do. Even as a civilian, as a civilian, I found that to be extremely important, and I didn't really understand that I had access to those kinds of training and instructionals. So now that you see that stuff's available, and then you start to meet people who take this very seriously, you understand that, hey, this makes sense for everybody. If a USPSA shooter has a failure with my product on a Sunday, I'm gonna hear about it Monday morning in a nasty email. And similarly, if we're going to make defensive ammunition, and even if we don't, like there are people who put FMJ ammo in their carry guns, and so your ammo might be used in a self-defense situation, whether you intend it for it to be used or not. My worst fear would be, somebody is found dead with their concealed carry gun in their hand, and in the chamber is one of my rounds with a dented primer. I don't know what I would do. I would probably quit. I would probably close the company, to be honest with you, because I don't know that I could live with that. That would weigh extremely heavily on my conscience. And so for both of those reasons, it has to work absolutely every time. And having been around a lot of manufacturing companies in my previous career, having been exposed to things like Six Sigma and understanding, statistical drift in your quality, and ISO 9000 and NADCAP and all these like high level certifications that you need to make aircraft products. And then I come into the firearms industry, which you would think would be comparable, and looking around and saying, Jesus, like these are the tolerances. These are insane. These aren't even to like a hundredths of a decimal point. Like this is what you guys think is acceptable. Well, this is easy. Like these guys just like aren't very good at what they're doing because they see it as a consumable product. They're trying to get the cost down. They're not interested in upgrading their tooling or their technology or automation, things like that. And so I don't have the money to do it now, but I'm going to start working on a way to get to that point. And so I'm 100% sure I can make a better product. That's no problem. I'll figure that part out. And the second thing that I think I can do is I think I can build brand loyalty, because what I can see is that the consumer, I'm looking around at these competitions, and, the top level guys shoot what they like, but most everybody else is just shooting whatever they could get. And I thought, all right, well, how do I build brand loyalty, right? I'm looking around and discovering that it's like these gun companies don't really exist in the sense of they don't really put much thought. Their marketing is very canned and generic. They don't have any personality, and part of that is because they can't, right? They can't be boisterous and loud and cause controversy because they're trying to get these big dollar military contracts, and as a result, they can't get too far out of the neutral edge, right? I mean, like look at fucking Raytheon. They got like that's the whole like meme, right? Is the Raytheon drone flying in with the LGBTQ flag on it? It's like, are you fucking serious? Like these guys are get out of here. Like this is hilarious. Just be who you are. Just admit. Like I think everybody would be happier if you guys just like, yeah, we fucking bomb kids overseas, like, but we're really good at it. I mean, we hit the target every time. So,
own it.
Own it, right? Just be good at it. Like, be who you are. And so I thought, all right, maybe I can just be authentic. Like, I'm not former military. I'm not former law enforcement. So I don't have those chops. I don't have those connections. So I'm behind the curve there. But I do think that I understand this gigantic market of civilians who are interested in guns from the perspective of like self-sovereignty and like home defense and protection. I have never been hunting in my life. My parents didn't own guns until after I was out of the house. I wasn't even allowed to play with toy guns because my parents wanted me to be like raised right. I shot 22s in Boy Scouts and stuff like that. But my introduction to guns was, all right, I'm 22 years old. I'm living on my own now. I'm an ex-college wrestler, so I'm pretty sure that I can handle myself in most situations. But I'm also smart enough to know that sometimes the situation, is not always up to you, and that people do in fact carry things like guns and knives and baseball bats and weapons, and then all bets are off. And so I need to expand my understanding of martial arts. And that's really what using a firearm is. It's a martial art, and anybody who thinks it's not doesn't understand anything about martial arts. Right? I mean, the American gun craft is basically as beautiful and as much the same as Japanese swordcraft, right? But people don't think of it that way. So I got my CPL and carried a gun for many years with very little actual real training. And I look back and I think, I definitely overestimated what I thought my capabilities were going to be. And so I'm glad that I'm where I'm at now. But again, kind of going back to my philosophy as a company, let's try to work with these training companies. So like this is another untapped market. People who are consuming large amounts of ammo are working with these training companies. Let's reach out to these training companies. Let's try to solve a problem for them. And the problem is they need ammunition for like they have high round count classes, but you can only fly on a plane with so much ammunition. So if I can make it easier for their students to have ammo delivered on site and it can be guaranteed ahead of time, then it can increase the number of students who are taking their classes, thereby increasing the amount of exposure I have, thereby increasing my, sort of passive sales with these training companies who are really doing the selling for me. And in the meantime, I get to go train with these guys. I get to increase my skills. And so it's like, one hand washes the other. And so that's kind of the niche that we've fallen into. And, as the years have gone on, there's been plenty of opportunities to kind of highlight why we think that's a good idea. And so.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's empirically been a good idea for you guys because, I mean, my biggest complaint as a consumer is that you can't keep stuff in stock. So, I mean, you're not even, you're selling them quicker than you can produce them.
Yeah, part of that is the supply chain as well. I mean, supply chain and capital, and, we're a small business again. So, we're kind of at the point where if I really wanted to bring my cost down, I would have to be doing more like direct. There's a couple of things that we don't get direct from a supplier that we could try to bring that margin up, but it's very complicated and it takes a lot of upfront capital. And it's unfortunately just not something that we have the ability to do. So,
I mean, I think of the relationship almost like my relationship with like a local farm, like a CSA or whatever. It's
Sure,
like
exactly. Yeah, I mean,
I
we
just
printed that.
buy
There's
whatever's
farm to
made this
table.
week, you know?
Yeah, we are
It's
the
like, oh,
farm to table.
tomatoes are in stock. Yeah,
That's
tomatoes
right,
are in stock. I'll buy
precisely.
tomatoes. Maybe next week cucumbers will be available. I'll get my cucumbers.
That's
You
right.
know?
Seasonal. Yeah, we do that. Like there are some calibers up here in Michigan. There's a caliber called 450 Bushmaster, very popular. We have some limitations that below a certain line, you have to use a straight wall cartridge for hunting. So it's basically like a straight wall cartridge that can be chambered in an AR. And so that's a seasonal thing that we make. We don't really have much penetration in the hunting community, but it's very like area specific. So we can turn that out for maybe 2 months, get some good margin because it's not a common caliber. People know they're going to have to pay more for it. And then we can get back to our bread and butter, which is the competition ammo, frangible. We have a lot of variety. We have a narrow lineup of calibers, but we have a lot of variety within those calibers generally, which I think people like.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. Awesome. I mean, so you said you think of firearms as like an extension of martial arts. Like the way I kind of look out of it,
Yeah,
it's a tool, right? It's a
right,
tool that empowers individuals, right?
right.
And it requires obviously a lot of education and training. But to me, that's where like kind of the overlap with Bitcoin comes into play, because I think of it kind of as one element of this like freedom tech arsenal, like this
Yes,
toolbox that people have available to them, but they need to actually realize the need, and then they actually have to go and train and educate themselves and use the fucking tool. It's not
yeah,
going to just do it for you. So
right.
I'm kind of curious, like where did Bitcoin come into this picture?
Sure.
Like
Yeah.
yeah.
So, I mean, I can start all the way back. I mean, I remember hearing about Bitcoin shortly after it was invented or released, whatever you call it,
Many such cases.
unleashed upon the world, whatever. But I'm not like a huge tech guy in particular, but sort of more of like a freedom type. So I remember hearing about it, thinking, oh, that's pretty wild. And then I remember hearing again in the news sometime later, some guy was like trying to acquire enough Bitcoin to buy a house with, or he was trying to sell his house, but he wanted to only accept Bitcoin. And so then that like, okay, well, this thing's been going on for a little while now. How come we can't get enough of it? Well, maybe, why is that? And so I remember reading the white paper back then, and it kind of going over my head maybe a bit. And then a couple more years pass, and you hear about Bitcoin mining and what's this, and okay, I got a crawl space under my house. Maybe I could take that old computer I had from college and overclock it and mine some Bitcoin. So again, I passed. So this is like the third time now that I should have been a billionaire, but as always, like everybody, everybody's got that kind of progression. And then so finally, how did it come in for business? So fast forward to 2018, I was redoing our entire website. I was starting to make, this is kind of after we discovered the competition crowd, and I realized, okay, we really need to put more effort into having our website be found. So how do we do that? My brother had programmed the initial website very quickly, just kind of threw something up on like Squarespace or whatever. So I said, okay, I'm going to like immerse. I would say what I am, I think of myself as the true like jack of all trades, master of none sort.
Yeah.
So I said, all right, I can't afford for somebody to build a great website, so I'm just going to have to like immerse myself in this topic for a month and learn everything there is to know and figure it out. So I rebuilt a whole new website, took all new pictures, learned about SEO and what words were important, like started looking at analytics. Okay, where do I think we can be in like the top 3 or 5 of a particular keyword? Like how do I reach these competition shooters? And so I spent a lot of time getting into it. And so as part of building the website, of course, you got to connect your payment gateways and all these things. And so even I would say a couple of years before that, I remember trying to find a payment gateway to be able to accept credit cards on the website, and finding that in the terms of service of almost every, PayPal, Square, Stripe, all these companies, they all had restrictions for against, being able to do transactions with firearms. So I was like, wow, there's only maybe 2 or 3 credit card processors And that's like a whole web of that you have to go down. So what is it exactly that you guys do? So like you're the gateway or you're the processor and like all these things. So I'm kind of figuring out how that works. And it's like, man, this is just, that's kind of crazy. There's only a couple people who will even allow me to accept credit cards. And then I'm building the new website. And that was the first time I saw that it at that point allowed you to be able to accept Bitcoin through Coinbase Commerce. And I thought, okay, that's interesting. You know, maybe I'll start to set that up and I'll offer it as just like a gimmick in a way. I'm curious to see if anybody's actually using this fucking thing to buy things. Like at this point, I don't own any. I don't even have a wallet. So I set all that stuff up, let it run. And, for the first, so that would be what, like February, March 2018, I think that would be. I think we probably went 5-6 months before we did one transaction in Bitcoin. It was like very, very few and far between. But over time, we started to get like one more here, one more there.
And you're using Coinbase Commerce at this point.
Yeah, at this point we were using, because again, my technological understanding of Bitcoin and the technology and
that's fine.
Who's doing what, KYC, all this stuff.
Yeah.
I just thought to myself, like, I'm literally the only person in the firearms world who will even accept Bitcoin.
Yeah.
So that has novelty in and of itself. And when I find the time to really like get into the nitty gritty of this stuff, then I really should do that. But for now, I've got 10 million other things to do. This is a plug and play solution. It'll just work.
Okay. So we're 6 months in, you're using Coinbase Commerce. You've had maybe one transaction.
Yeah. So then fast forward to the start of the pandemic, right? So, Bitcoin kind of had that situation where it went up to 20,000 and everybody bought some, and then it sank back down to like, this is like pre-pandemic.
Well, March 2020, we hit 3,500. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So then
when the stock market collapsed.
Yeah, yes. So the pandemic happens and everything collapses. At this point, I don't even know what the price of Bitcoin is. We were the busiest we had ever been because everybody thought that the zombie apocalypse was.
Everyone needed rounds at that point.
Everybody needed rounds right now. So we're shipping stuff as fast as we can. And all of a sudden I noticed like we're getting all these Bitcoin. People are just buying with Bitcoin all of a sudden. We're getting like 2-3 a week. This is kind of weird. And that went on from, April until kind of the end of the summer, fall. Why? Because people were selling their Bitcoin when it was low. And buying ammo with it for some reason.
Well, I joke that you sell stable coins, real stable coins, because people think like, oh, like I need to get like USDC or whatever as a stable coin. It's like, no, like let me get some 556. And
I thought about
my Bitcoin to that.
I thought about coming up with a coin that's backed by ammunition. Like we just buy warehouse space, and for every coin there's like 1,000 rounds.
Stick to Bitcoin only. Stick to Bitcoin. You're on the right track. Don't get distracted.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. I won't get pulled to the dark side. Yeah.
So people were buying a ton of.
Yeah. So people all of a sudden are buying a ton of Bitcoin. Not a ton with Bitcoin, but like definitely more. And
it was spiking.
It was spiking. We also took Ethereum at that point. We took
Coinbase Commerce. Yeah.
Yep, exactly. All the kind of like big ones that Coinbase Commerce would accept. And so it gets toward the end of that year in 2020. And of course, these coins are starting to come back up at this point. And that was the time at which it was getting ready to do like end of year accounting. And so I thought, I should log in. I haven't logged into Coinbase Commerce in like 6 months. I should log in and kind of see what our balance was. And in my head, I have a master's in finance. And so I keep the books pretty good. And so I thought in my head, there's probably like 20 grand in this account, So I log in and it's at like 75. It's like, oh shit. There's no way how did I lose track of this much money? And that's when I looked and I said, oh, okay, well, that's because they all increased by like 100% in the last 6 months. Like, what the fuck is going on? And so that was the point where I thought I need to really get serious about this. I need to get a much better understanding of what's happening here than I do. This is not just a speculative asset. Like I really need to get into the tech of it. So that kind of began my journey where, okay, well, what's a node? Well, this is that makes sense. Like, why the hell did they call it mining? Like, that's just a stupid word. Like, if I think about it this way, I totally understand it, but I can totally understand why people don't know what it means. And so then it's like, okay, well, now you're getting into, at some point I probably stumbled into like KYC versus non-KYC. And then you're like, okay, now I'm really understanding what this is. This is not what I thought it was, or it's so much more than that. This is I really need to get into the weeds more, and so that was maybe that kind of went on for about a year where I sort of dabbled in the tech and okay, let me look into mining. All right, how does that work? That's something maybe I could do as a side business. All right, so you get that, and then okay, well, why would you run your own node? Okay, well, this is why you would run your own node. Well, how do I do that? I don't really want to build a Raspberry Pi computer. Let me see what off-the-shelf solutions I can find. And so that kind of went on for like a year or so. And then what really made it click and what really kind of settled me into where I am now was going to the Guns and Bitcoin conference in Miami that ran the same week as the actual Bitcoin conference. And that would have been 2022. That would have been basically
last year.
Last year, yeah. And so that's when, I meet these guys from Samurai Wallet. You talk to the guys at Ronin Dojo, and I look around and it's like, okay, these guys basically have a digital AR-15. Like, this is actually better than an AR-15 because you can kill me and take the AR-15 from my dead hands, but you can kill me and my 12 words will die with me and go fuck yourself.
Yep.
And there's nothing that you can do about it. And so long as I believe in myself in the sense that you can torture me to death, but I'm never going to say those 12 words in the order you want me to say them, then that's amazing. Like, that to me is really why I got into business for myself. I wanted to be able to tell more people no. But I say this, like, I'm the kind of guy who actually loves to say yes, but I always like the option to say no. That's what got me into martial arts. That's what got me into wrestling as a, kind of overweight, not so popular kid in middle school. I didn't want to get bullied by kids. And, I wanted to be able to, kind of also hang out with the nerdy kids and not sort of have that stigma over me because I kind of didn't really fit into either of those groups perfectly. And so being able to beat the shit out of anybody in school who wanted to mess with me was my ability to be able to say no. And so that's just kind of always, I can look back at my life and see how that's manifested in many different ways leading up to, well, ultimately, like, that's the reason you own a gun, because the government can do anything they want to you until you say no. And you can only say no if you have the means to back it up. And that's why it's such a contentious topic. The government does not like to be told no at the end of the day. And they have the right to kill you for doing such. With Bitcoin, to me, it was the same thing. If I have the ability to say no, I want that to the nth degree. And so, then I spent some time like sort of rebuilding everything or trying to rebuild what I thought I had done with Bitcoin through Coinbase Commerce and these things. Okay, well, how do I start to slowly like unravel all that and build it back to be more concerned about privacy and to have as much non-KYC Bitcoin as I can, because that to me is like, having a spare AR-15 buried in a waterproof case somewhere in a public park. I may have done that. I'm not sure I can potentially admit to that, but yeah, there may or may not be a few of those. And so like, that's your backup plan, right? I mean, nobody wants to turn their guns in, but they may come and take them while I'm at work, and I may come home and there's no guns left in the house. And then we find out that, they're lining up everybody to face the wall. And it's like, okay, I'm glad I buried that one. That's kind of how I thought of it. That's how I got into it.
Okay. Lot to unpack there.
Yeah.
So first of all, I love the guys. Love the guys at Samurai and Ronin Dojo. Like, they're good people.
Great guys.
So it does not surprise me. And most of the Guns and Bitcoin crowd, like, they were great people. So like, it doesn't surprise me that they hit you hard and fast with the freedom money pitch. Depending on my mood, I'll call Bitcoin freedom money or fuck you money, and I think they both fit. And I could tell that your perspective is the same. So when did you switch to BTCPayServer?
So basically, right when I got home from that conference, I said, okay, we need to get away from Coinbase Commerce completely. Like, yeah. I need to do that.
I'm pretty sure the Coinbase Commerce terms and conditions say like no firearm sales, probably.
They probably do. And again, like, then you start looking at it like, all right, I'm only going to be able to get away with this for so long, probably. Yeah. So what do we do? So I started looking into, okay, well, what options do I have? And unfortunately, like our website is built on a platform where we have to work within their box.
It's Shopify, right?
Right. So we have to work in that box. What can I do? So the BTC Pay integration is a little tougher. I had tried a different company's node. I won't, I'm not really interested in like, trashing those guys or anything. The node works fine for what it is. I just found that it did not work. It did not work with BTC Pay the way that they said it would. And BTC Pay basically said, yeah, like we know that this isn't going to work very well, and like we'll do our best to try to help you out, but like this is not
Like
really
the
our
customer needs to like use Tor or whatever. Like it's not.
Yeah, it was. It just
practice.
I found it impossible to connect. Could not get it to work, and so for a while I just kind of let that go. It's like I don't have time to deal with this. I got a million other problems going on to solve.
Fair.
Market was kind of turning, COVID, logistics, all this shit. So then I finally was able to get BTC Pay to work in some capacity, and then now I'm getting to the point where it's on its own node, on its own server, pointed to its own node, and so it's as disconnected as you can get it. That was always the goal. So it was just a matter. I think unfortunately I do like BTC Pay, but again I think like we're at a weird early adoption type stage where I just think eventually there'll be better options that are like right now. I find the hard part is for a layman like myself. I'm not a tech guy, right? I have an ammo company to run.
Yep.
So for me, I still like I'm a very mechanical guy. Like I work on cars. Like I build my own rifles. Like I'm a very mechanical guy, but I'm not a software guy. I don't have the knack for it. My father, my brother are both software people. It's just not for me. So I find it difficult to be doing any kind of coding or stuff like that. And I could also look at it from the perspective, I can see why other companies in the gun industry aren't using it, because they just really don't know how to make it all work. And from a tech perspective, we're pretty behind the curve. And so, we
had an audience member in his shout out on the last episode. He's like, we're still early. Like we are very early.
We're still early.
Like before BTC Pay existed, it was very bad. I want to be clear. Like most people were using stuff like
100%.
Coinbase Commerce or BitPay, which have the same exact issues with all the other centralized payment processors in credit card land. So like the fact that we have a tool like BTC Pay available to us is massive. I will say the team at BTC Pay knows that they need to make it easier, that everything needs to be easier. I think like, I'm not going to take full credit for it, but I think like 3 years ago, for my other podcast, Rabbit Hole Recap, our developer set up the first Shopify BTC Pay instance together and like got the ball rolling on relatively easily integrating Shopify with BTC Pay.
Oh, right.
So like that's how like quick our side of the industry is moving, and on the Bitcoin land is in a matter of years we've made substantial improvements. But yeah, we're definitely still early. Part of the reason I wanted you on the show is because you're accepting through BTC Pay. Because you're accepting Bitcoin in a sovereign fashion. You're actually using it as freedom money, and you're actually I mean, like it's not auto converting to dollars. Like you have to manually sell it if you want to convert it to dollars, which is what I think leads the next leg of merchant adoption, which is this idea of actual small businesses that have a use case for Bitcoin. That's not just like publicity. Maybe that's how you started. It sounds like that's how you kind of started, but like they have a desire to stack freedom money. They want customers to pay in it. And they want to do it in a sovereign fashion. So, I mean, you kind of mentioned like the difficulty of setting it up. Do you like part of the reason I asked you to come on the show is because you were feeling quite passionate on Twitter about the fact that more companies in the firearms industry do not accept Bitcoin.
Right.
Like it seems like such an obvious, I mean, like there's Operation Choke Point. There's like obviously very hard to get a payment process. It seems like a perfect fit. I mean, they like New York regulators recently like pushed the thing where like the credit card companies will all like mark it as I'm paying to a gun store. They're like setting up
a merchant code. Correct.
They're like setting it up to start, blocking the payments, right? It's like the first step. And so it seems like the industry, right? Like it seems like the industry that should be moving into Bitcoin. and is not. Like, what are the why?
Why? Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of reasons. Number one, the industry is just very old. It's fucking loaded with boomers, and they just don't understand it. And I hate to be that guy, like it's such a played out, boomer. But the
Fine by
industry
me.
is, they've been around for a long time. Things are working pretty well. They kind of do what they do. So there's just not really a lot of incentive to change. I was actually at a event this weekend with one of the marketing people from Brownells, which is a huge website, obviously.
Yep.
And I said, Roy, you guys got to take Bitcoin, man. You guys got to do it, because if you guys do it, I think that'll put a lot of pressure on other people to do it, because I'm just, some fucking guy. Brownells, you guys are got a 300.
It's the spot.
Real deal.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's just like, that's where I first learned how to build an AR-15. I mean,
Yeah.
I watched all the Brownells videos. Like, you guys got to do it. And he, I don't know that it'll happen, but he's like, I know exactly who I need to talk to. Like, I'll mention it to him, if they have any questions. I said, I'm sure it'll be expensive for you guys, because you got a very complicated website, but you also have a lot more resources. And so if it's going to cost you, say, $30,000 to have it programmed into your site, just to pick a number off the top of my head, like, you actually could spend that money. Like, I think you'd get a return on your investment just from the marketing standpoint. Like, see it as a tech upgrade, and also see it as part of your marketing budget, and that way you're spreading it out over 2 line items, and you can make it make more sense to somebody on your finance team who's like, really being got a hawk eye out for those kinds of expenditures. So I think it's just a matter of, they have to see and also, like, we have a lot of suppliers that are very hesitant to even give you like 30-day terms. Like, these people are, it's like a cash only kind of business. They're very old and established.
But that's why
So
Bitcoin is useful there.
I agree.
Right? That's
I agree.
a pro to Bitcoin.
And also, it's like, guys, you have to see the writing on the wall. At the end of the day, there's no way to accept a credit card without the blessing of Visa and MasterCard, and then also the banks that are even above them. And so you can reinvent the wheel however many. You can call authorized.net whatever you want to call it. You can call it parallel economy. You can call it whatever which is exactly what it is. Like, people on the right are all like hyped up about parallel economy this, parallel economy that. And that was a point I made, which also related to, like, why do we accept Bitcoin? It's like, guys, this is just like freedom repackaged in freedom. This is the same credit card company that we personally have been using since 2016, but they wrap it in a flag and they call it parallel economy, and they make you think that somehow they are getting around the same banks and the same Visa and MasterCard, right. But they're just not. They're just not.
Bullshit.
It's all bullshit. And I'm sorry, but this is the only way to do it. And so if we can get people, if we can encourage it to be used more, then we can encourage more people to go into developing the software and the technology that we need to make it work better. And so if in my limited capacity, I can find a way to make this make sense to the layman in the gun community who doesn't really understand what it is. Like, these are guys that like to deal in the physical world, right? I want a rifle in my hands. So, like, to try to get the guy to imagine like a digital AR that's in the cloud, like that's I've tried to describe it that way. Like, how do I make this make sense to people? And so, I've tried to relay some of the ways that, like, Michael Saylor has described it as digital energy, things like that, but sort of put like the Second Amendment spin on it in the way, like, this is actually like a digital AR-15, like, but it's better because they can't take it from you. And so, everybody remembers their social security number because that's what we were taught when we were a kid. So this idea that, like, you shouldn't be able to remember 12 words in a row, like, that's bullshit. Like, anybody could do that, just like you could learn 9 digits, right? Like, you should be able to do that. And frankly, if you're not willing to do that, then maybe this isn't for you. And that's fine right now. But in 10 or 15 years, like, it's going to be foisted upon you, probably whether you like it or not. Like, the digitization of money is going to happen whether you like it or not, just like we went from checks to debit cards and what have you, gold to, fiat paper currency, wampum to gold, whatever. Like, it's going to happen whether you like it or not, in the same way that you would never get into a gunfight with a spear or a rock or a stick. Why? Because it's ancient technology. That's why you shouldn't carry a revolver. Like, this is ancient technology, guys. We've moved on to like magazine fed weapons, you know? So that's what Bitcoin is to me. It's the next evolution of money. And so the faster you get on board, probably the better off you are. And certainly for us.
Yeah, I mean, first off, consider this me offering to donate my time to help Brownells accept Bitcoin. Like
Honestly,
if they need the
let 'em
help,
know.
I'm happy to help.
Right.
I agree that would be massive. There's a little bit of a disconnect. I mean, first of all,
Yeah.
there's a lot of overlap. You mentioned the idea of like if you're not willing to take the personal responsibility, then maybe Bitcoin's not for you. And the massive overlap there with firearms, obviously. There's
Right.
so much overlap across both tools, but it's an interesting disconnect because if you go to like a local small gun store, like they realize credit cards are a problem, and they push you to cash. They push you first to debit cards and then to cash because debit cards are slightly better in terms of I don't know, payment processing and whatnot.
Yeah. Sometimes are lower. Yeah.
But they try and push you to cash. The smart small gun stores try and push you to cash.
Right.
And then you have like this whole online firearm industry that is pretty much dominated by credit cards because they feel like there's no other option. So to me, like
Right.
Bitcoin is a natural, like Bitcoin will take longer, I think, to get adopted by the small gun stores as long as cash isn't, fully banned. I mean, it's
Correct. I agree.
I don't even know if they'll fully ban cash because most people just choose not to use cash. It's like it's just whatever, like, especially like in our age range and younger. Like most of my peers just don't use cash. They would rather use Venmo and their credit card and Apple Pay and all this shit. So maybe like a cash ban doesn't even happen, and those small gun stores will just continue accepting cash. But on the online side, that's where the real
Right.
value lies. And to me, it should be a relatively. I mean, I agree that the tools are difficult and they could get easier and they will get easier. And a lot of us are working on that. But it seems so obvious on the online side as an
I
alternative to
hear you,
credit
man. I
cards.
hear you. It really does. And that's a good way to think about it, and that's sort of where those two things happened in conjunction. We were, I used to make large cash deposits because we'd get home from a gun show and I might have,
Yep.
$15,000 worth of $100, $20 bills. But as we got away from those, I stopped making cash deposits because we just don't really get that much cash. And it's not scalable, right? I can't,
Yeah.
I kept getting emails from these guys like, hey, can I send you a check from Arkansas and, like buy the ammo that way? Like, no, bro, I don't have fucking time for that, man. I honestly, that would be cool, but I just can't do it. I cannot do it. I will die. I'll kill myself. Like it's going to be too much. I don't have the energy for it. I really wish I could. I mean, guys, can I send you a cashier's check? Can I?
Yeah. A money order. Can I pay with money order?
Mail it? Yeah. Can you mail it COD? Like, oh God, no. So, yeah, then well, this is a way for me to, in a way, accept cash, right? A non credit card currency via wires and electricity. And so, yeah, it makes sense. And you would think, but you just have to get over all the other stuff. But it's not real. Well, yeah, I know. But do you think your dollar, like, what do you mean by real? Like it's like you're talking. It's like that scene in The Matrix. Like what is real exactly?
Yeah.
Like you think your bank account is real? No, it's software and numbers floating in cyberspace that they can alter, change, delete anytime they want. So you don't seem to have a problem with that. Like you trust the computers that move those digits between your bank account and whoever else's bank account that you're transacting with, but you don't trust a decentralized set of computers doing exactly the same thing, except they're not in the hands of a bunch of multinational companies and oligarchs who don't fucking care about you and are probably getting ready to set off some kind of device and like go to their bunker in New Zealand. Like that's who you trust. But you don't trust your own node. You don't trust yourself to be able to remember these 12 words and like do just a modicum of research and work. Like to me, that's the same as, these are all people who, the trad culture people on Twitter and the internet who are all like raising their own chickens and digging their own water wells and all these things. And like, I love that stuff. I have solar panels. I've got my own water well, my own septic system. So I want my own fucking money. I want my own bank account. I want a system that is more in my control than it currently is. And I saw Bitcoin as that was the obvious answer. And so, yeah, I think part of it is just, again, like, I'm 38, so I'm sort of like a boomer millennial. I'm like at the top end of the millennial spectrum. I, I had a cell phone when I was like 14, but it had like a 200 minutes and like 50 text messages, and I couldn't use it or my parents would fucking kill me. It was like only to call for emergencies. So like I lived through that, and now I'm just like everybody else. I got a modern phone and technology, so I can see how much that progressed over that small period of time. And so to me, it's easy to see the inevitable flow for the future. But I think for some who are older than me, it's very difficult for them to grasp some of these concepts. Like you really have to take it. You have to figure out ways to make analogies very simple. And like, sometimes people criticize me because maybe I don't get the analogy exactly perfect when it comes to like, well, what is mining? And, like, how does a node work? And fine. But if that means that I can talk my mother into, getting a Bitcoin wallet, it's just like, Mom, here, I'm going to give you this passport. You need to remember these 12 words. And like, that's all you really need to know about it right now. Just know that I'm going to be putting some things into here. And like, this is what you need to do. And then eventually you like work their way into it little bit by little bit. But, yeah, I think that's what I think I try. I've always been good at explaining things, I think, and you get that way from years and years and years of trying to convert anti-gun people into pro-gun people, right? You have to figure out very concise arguments, and you have to figure out how to read people and understand like what makes sense to them. And so I try to do that with Bitcoin. Like, what's the one nugget I can put in this guy's head that maybe isn't the full picture, but it's going to get him enough to like start thinking about it and maybe do some of his own research, which is exactly what I did. That's how I got into it. And so I think in our world, there are, guys will watch like 15,000 Grand Thumb videos trying to figure out like what optic to buy. They never fucking shoot, but like they watched, 10,000 hours of reviews on optics. But it's like, you won't watch a 1.5 hour podcast where, I think people criticize Michael Saylor for a lot of things. I think he explains Bitcoin very well. And so I try to send his podcasts to people in general, because I think he does a very good job of kind of laying it out in maybe an hour. And it's like, if you can't, just take an hour, just listen to it and you'll get it, I think.
Yeah. I mean, once again, lots of overlap. I mean, we have that in like the Bitcoin world, right? Where like people will spend like 10,000 hours watching like philosophy Bitcoin podcasts and not actually learn how to hold their own keys and use their own node.
Correct.
And like actually train as using it as freedom money. I
Right.
mean, my Zen one overlap. Like, I think the Zen on Bitcoin, to me, like I call it doomer optimism. So like my Zen on Bitcoin is that like as censorship increases, like people will figure out that they need it, right? They'll need money that can't be blocked and that cannot be easily blocked and cannot be easily seized. And it's very similar with the firearm industry in that regard, and specifically with the firearm industry using Bitcoin. Like, we are in the trend where credit cards are going to start censoring firearm purchases and ammo purchases and all accessories and everything. And as that starts to happen, it'll wake up to people. Like, business owners will realize, like, I need to start accepting Bitcoin because I have no other option. The frustration part comes, and I can sense it in you. The frustration comes when you can see it clearly, and it would be way less painful if people prepared for it ahead of time. And so many ignore that potential opportunity to prepare ahead of time. But I think, ultimately, like, as censorship increases, people will move to Bitcoin because they have no other option. It's just frustrating how clearly it seems sometimes, and people just don't necessarily listen, right?
Right. Yeah. I think, again, like looking at it from, I wouldn't say that I'm like some kind of a real serious prepper in the way
Yeah.
that some of these people think that they are. But I certainly am a prepper to a degree. Like I said, I'm interested in a lot of different things. I have solar panels on my house. I grew up with my own water well and septic system. So I thought everybody lived that way.
Right.
If you get older and you realize, like, yeah, this is actually really good. I control more of my own stuff. When there's a boil water warning, I don't have to worry about it. And I always wondered why that was as a kid. And then my dad explained it to me one day. And again, I just like that seemed to be the way to live to me. And so you're prepping for all these things. You're prepping for like an EMP. You're prepping for the, Yellowstone volcano eruption and all this shit. Like, but you're not prepping, and you are prepping for what you think of as a governmental collapse, and maybe you don't think that's because the country's going to get engulfed in like a civil war or anything, but the reality is, like, money has a lot to do with that. Like, money and the economy. Look at other countries where they have hyperinflation. I mean, it can happen for any number of reasons, right? It doesn't just happen because of a dictatorship or whatever. It can happen because of an internal civil war. I mean, all kinds of different things. And so you're prepping for all this other stuff, and this is the one that you just won't take the time to understand. Like, yeah, that's for sure a little bit frustrating. But again, but to me, I see that as an opportunity. So
Yeah.
here's a community I can tap into where maybe I'm not the best at this. So I'm going to go learn from the people who are much better at it than me, the Bitcoin people. And probably what's going to happen along the way is I'm going to find a lot of Bitcoin people who don't own a gun and who are the exact same, but from the other side, right? They're prepped to the gills. They've got, a million cold wallets everywhere. These guys, like, they practice they can memorize 100 words in a row because they got like 10 wallets and all this shit, and they got their metal cards are all stamped out, and like they got half the passphrase at their cabin and this and that. But it's like, you don't even own a fucking gun. Are you serious? Like, do you? In that case, you better hope that you've got enough intestinal fortitude to be literally tortured to death and not give up your passphrase. And looking at some of you guys, frankly, I are pretty low. So I think the minute that they put the towel over your face and they pour Mountain Dew on it, you're going to be screaming those 12 words pretty quick.
Oh, that's a new one. Mountain Dew boarding.
Yeah, that's actually what you're supposed to use
Because the carbonation.
The carbonation is like 1,000 times worse.
Noted. You learn something new every day.
So anyway, yeah. So it's like, so I see the same thing from both sides, and so I think, well,
does the sugar help, or is it like, can I just use soda water, or is that
I don't know about that. I think, I mean, Mountain Dew is like fairly caustic too. I mean, maybe Coca-Cola would probably be worse.
It's like the acid
like
and the
acidity.
That's interesting. Okay, sorry, I derailed you.
We'll have to try that later. No, it's okay. So, and one thing that I find the gun industry is bad at is technology, right? So
Yeah.
I want to be around these people who understand the technology side, and maybe these people can solve some other problems for us as well. So here's an alliance that we can build. I feel the same way about the marijuana legalization community, right?
Yep.
Regardless of whether you think that's a good idea or morally acceptable, whether it's your thing to do, whatever.
Yep.
I don't think people should be smoking crack in the streets, but like, I do think marijuana should be federally legal. I think that's it's going to happen whether we like it or not.
Right.
So
people should be able to make their own decision, and also another great fit for the Bitcoin industry.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm like a small L libertarian. So here's another industry that has the same problem, right? They can't accept credit cards. They have problems accepting money, but they're a very powerful industry. There's a lot of money there. There's a lot of investment capital. It's a booming, growing market in many states. So here are sort of three industries that share. It's like a three-circle Venn diagram. There's like all this stuff in the middle that we have problems that we all have together that we can help each other with. I think there's a lot of people with a marijuana charge on their record who legally can't own a gun because of that. So
right.
How about we all team up and get on the same side and start trying to work together and figure out a way to like build alliances between those three industries? And so that, to me, like, that's why I went to guns and Bitcoin. I wanted to be I wanted to learn. I wanted to go into a room where I thought I was the dumbest guy in the room and just listen to those guys for a weekend and come away with a few nuggets that I thought I can work with as a business, but this will make me better at explaining it to other people, right? Like, though, when you really learn something hands-on, you're much better at teaching it to others, and that's what it was for me.
Well, just because it's infuriating, and you kind of mentioned it, you can have a marijuana charge, so you can't own a marijuana business, which is really fucking insane.
Even crazier.
Yeah. So talking about overlap, one thing I think is interesting is the firearm industry in America, and you've been very outspoken about this on Twitter lately, is obviously a massive target for regulation. And it's a industry that, you know, I can't imagine running a small business in it. You have a ton of bureaucracy. I saw someone in the comments asked specifically, like, do you have issues with, you know, selling larger round amounts? But I'm curious, like, I think this is a blind spot for a lot of Bitcoiners. I think, you know, we talk about, I don't know who said the quote. Was it Gandhi? I don't fucking know. That, you know, first they laugh at you, then they fight you. There's a middle. Right. There's three.
Then they something, and then you win, right?
And then you win. Yeah. First they laugh at you, then they fight at you, then you win.
I think there's something in between.
Yeah. But anyway, the general direction, right? I think a lot of Bitcoiners think the then they fight you stage has already happened. And I actually get a lot of flack within the industry because I say that we're so that has not even come close yet.
Not even come close. Not even
and I think like the firearm industry understands the risk. They understand the risk of government overreach. And they've been fighting it for a long fucking time. And even things like every regulated Bitcoin company right now, we have Dr. Dre. First they ignore you.
That's right. Yeah, I knew that.
Then they laugh at you. Then they fight you. Then you win. There we go. Okay, we nailed it. Thanks, team. So, like in the Bitcoin industry, every single regulated Bitcoin company is keeping lists of Bitcoiners and our transaction history.
100%.
KYC, right? That's what we call it, KYC. In the firearm industry, we've seen that as a red line, right? This idea that we don't want lists of gun owners because that's the first step to confiscation. Now, I don't think the firearm industry has been necessarily very successful on that front, but at least
by and large, no. But
right, I mean, but
that's something that they and they
the threat is recognized. Right.
Correct.
The threat is recognized. So I'm curious on like your perspective. You're running a small business in the firearm industry. Yep. You're very outspoken about political issues on Twitter. Like, how should Bitcoiners be thinking about, like, from your perspective, like, how should Bitcoiners be thinking about this?
Yeah. So, I mean, we are sort of in a very parallel situation here. So Bitcoiners, if you own guns, you know, what you need to think of is where we are with Bitcoin. Similarly is, like, for example, here in Michigan, they just passed what they call a universal background check law. So in most states, this is not a loophole. Everybody knew that this existed and it was intended to exist. When they passed the law to require background checks from to purchase a gun from a dealer, because remember, like in the 60s, 70s, you could buy a gun from a Sears catalog and it could be shipped directly to your home. Serial numbers were not required to be on a firearm until 1968. Okay, so there's like a shit ton of guns out there that have literally no serial number, and it was never a problem. So what happens is incrementalism. They make you put a number on the gun in 1968, and then they get up to the background check, the Brady law, and now you have to get a background check to buy a gun from a dealer. But in the law, there was a provision that if I was selling a gun person to person, you hand me $500 and I hand you a rifle, there's no background check there. There's no forms. It was intended to be that way. That was the compromise that the anti-gunners always say, well, you guys never compromise. Can't you just compromise with us? That was the compromise. And now here you are in 2023 in Michigan, for example, taking that compromise back away. And so they just passed a law in Michigan where now that you can't do that anymore. If you are doing a private sale for a long gun, person to person, you have to go to a dealer, and the dealer has to do a background check, and you have to do a form 4473, and
shit.
it's all recorded. So in most other states, and well, I should say in many other states, it's been that way for a long time. But like that was something that I really held on to about Michigan that made us actually like one of the better states from a gun law perspective. We did lose the private sale exemption on handguns some years ago, and that was a disappointment. But most states it was both. In any case, now we can't do that anymore. In reality, it's sort of unenforceable because they have no record of where those guns were at this moment in time. And so I could always say, I sold that gun 5 years before the law passed, and there's no way for them to actually know. Again, but that's
the most dangerous laws tend to be the vague ones where they can selectively enforce.
Exactly. And so, basically now they are where we are with Bitcoin in the same fashion where, hey, yeah, we need to start KYCing all this Bitcoin. We can't have people running around with unregistered Bitcoin because God knows what they would do with it. Like take out the word Bitcoin and insert firearm, and you'll find that it's exactly the same argument. Well, we can't have guys running around with unserialized guns. You can't be 3D printing your own guns because we just don't like that, and we don't know where they all are. So yeah, you can't do that anymore. So we're kind of in the same situation with both of these technologies right at the same time. And government, luckily, is, by and large comprised of people who are just some of the most unimpressive people in the world, right? Honestly, very, very low IQ folks, people who couldn't hack it in other industries. I mean, it's like the profession of last resort, I find. So they're dumb enough to not really understand the technology, so it's taken them a while to get brought up to speed to be able to figure it out. But eventually they're going to figure it out, or I should say they're going to figure out how to write a law to make it hard for you to do. Again, kind of we're in that situation right now with the pistol brace ARs, right? I mean, they're probably going to be, I probably shouldn't say it out loud, but like, obviously everybody knows why we did that. It's to get around the SBR laws. I mean, plain and simple. Like it may not have started out that way, but everybody knows that that's really what that was about, because SBR laws are bullshit and they shouldn't be here to begin with. And so it's not our fault that we read the law, and when you guys wrote it, you were stupid enough to not write it in a way that this couldn't be figured out. And we're smarter than you are, so we figured it out, and go fuck yourselves. Suck on it, like choke on it. But now you have the ATF writing their own regulations and trying to insist that they have the ability to classify all these things as SBRs. And, it's May 30th. So in 2 days, unless you're a member of the Firearms Policy Coalition or the Second Amendment Foundation, or you own a specific type of brace, if you haven't registered that in less than 48 hours, you are going to become a felon. So what happens when the same thing happens on the Bitcoin side? We've passed this law, and in 6 months, all of your Bitcoin needs to be KYC. You need to turn in your Bitcoin. So what do? And for me personally, I've decided that, look, there's a lot of things I would love to own right now that I can't. I think there should be no problem with being able to own a machine gun. I think you should be able to own grenades, rocket launchers, you name it, right? But I have decided at this point, like, I'm not going to accept any more. So regardless of what gets passed, whatever brace law you pass, magazine pass, etc., like I'm definitely not complying with any of those. And I may not be able to do anything personally to move things in the reverse, deregulate suppressors, deregulate machine guns, these kinds of things. I may not have the political will or the capital to be able to do that. But my line in the sand is I'm certainly not accepting anything more. So I'm not registering my braces. If Michigan actually has control of the legislature and the governorship on the Democrat side right now. if they pass a bill that says you have to turn in your AR-15 tomorrow, I'm simply not going to do it. And everybody knows that I've got them, and they can decide what they will.
Wait, really? You have AR-15s?
So, exactly right. Yeah, like what a surprise. So yeah, for me, I think that's just the bottom line. Like you have to decide what your line in the sand is, and I think for Bitcoin people, that time is already here. And as a Bitcoiner, you should be thinking about that yourself. Like, what exactly is my line in the sand, and what have I prepared so that I can actually say no in that situation and have the ability to not have to comply, right? Like, how do I set myself up as best as I can so that I don't have to comply with them? Like, do I have the ability to, move things around in wallets without being connected to the internet? Like I was looking at Gotenna's product and was kind of interested in that. They're using like UHF
Don't waste your time.
radio waves. Don't. Oh yeah, maybe it's not good, but like
I was excited about Gotenna.
Like I'm excited from the sense that I'm glad people are thinking about it in ways that I can't. So
I wasted my time on Gotenna, so I'm just trying to save you your time, Justin.
Oh, that's fair, and I appreciate that. And I'm always willing to learn. Like I'm certainly no expert in what the best technology is out there. I guess I would say I'm glad that somebody out there is thinking about it, because I'm trying to do the same thing from my end. Like how do I manufacture ammunition that is literally untraceable? How do I manufacture ammo that can both, like for, I can talk about something more in length, but it looks like you had a question. I didn't want to.
Well, no. First of all, on Gotenna is proprietary. It's not an open platform, and they make the majority of their money on military and police contracts. Like you can get a better version of Gotenna if you're the military or police, and then we get the cucked version, and like it's not open and interoperable. But like mesh in general, I'm very excited about.
Mesh technology. I should say that. Yeah. Forgive me if I use Kleenex instead of.
No, I'm just trying to save you time because I wasted my time. I was an outspoken. I spent a lot of hours on Gotenna. First of all, I had a freak reach out. Gandhi did not say that quote. Just thanks to the freaks.
I think I remember seeing it being attributed to Gandhi, but
he didn't say the quote.
Like quotes that everybody said, but nobody said. Yeah.
Yeah. So to me, the overlap. The word of the day, the word of the podcast is overlap. I could see it going. I could see Bitcoin going the path, and I know you said good words, and there's a lot of respect there with Michael Saylor. But Saylor, I agree with a lot of things that Saylor believes, but then also to me, he's this new, like more statist entrant into Bitcoin.
I can see,
I can see where we start to see restrictions getting put in place. And the Saylor camp of Bitcoiners are like, this is regulatory clarity. This is what we need for the BlackRocks to come into the world.
100%. Yeah, I agree.
The overlap I see is I could see it being very similar to silencers, which is it's amazing to me that to buy a can, like you have to pay the federal government, and then you have to get on the list, like the primo list. Like there's like that is the list, the list of lists. To be on to get the suppressor, and then you have to wait a year to receive it. And most people just accepted it, right? Like that is just like that is how it is. And I could see a similar situation where Bitcoin, it's like, okay, like you pay them your fee, you buy the Bitcoin, you register the Bitcoin with them. Maybe it gets delivered to a registered Bitcoin dealer or something. Maybe it doesn't, right? But then you get your address that yours is assigned to you. Then you put in your address, and then you're allowed to hold. You can even hold your own keys. Like don't worry, you can hold your own keys after the year, and you pay your amount. But like we know exactly where it is at any given time, and if we want to retroactively ban it in the future, like you're on the list, you're tagged. Like we know exactly where to go. And I think there's a whole group of Bitcoiners that would like support that. They would be like, we're getting regulatory clarity. We're going to have BlackRock come in. They're going to put trillions of dollars in. It's going to pump the price of Bitcoin.
I can see maybe, and if Michael Saylor was like getting ready to write me a big check, sorry, like my apologies. But like I could see you viewing Michael as like Jeff Bezos in the early days of Amazon, where it's like you would be an idiot not to listen to the guy to a degree
Yeah.
because you're like revolutionizing this industry. But at the end of the day, you know that this guy's going to turn into like an oligarch and pull the ladder up underneath him and make sure that nobody else. And like, I fully see that because that's how the firearms industry is. You know, like
Right.
these gigantic companies at the top, that's why they don't give a fuck about your business as a civilian, right? Is they make their money mostly on military and law enforcement contracts, and selling to the populace here is the cherry on top. But they don't get to do that in any other country. So they just don't really care. They're not going to put any marketing effort into you. Their marketing is, hey, we sell, it's like look at Trigicon, right down the street from us. I love Trigicon optics, but like their selling point is our prices are really fucking high and the military uses it. So don't be a poor and pay the money. And like H&K is the same thing. Like, and they actually fully acknowledge it. And so it's like these guys, they are the top of, they are what you think of as the military industrial complex.
Right.
And like that for me is what kind of got me into using that phrase militia industrial complex is, hey, that's really what this Second Amendment was written for. And all these companies that got founded back in the 1800s who had that at their heart are very far from that now. Winchester, Federal, Remington, Ruger, all these like very old storied companies. They pay a lot of money to lobbyists and they play the government games just like everybody else. And so you really can't trust them any more than you can trust the people who are truly on the anti-gun side, because most of the anti-gun legislation that we've had over the last 30, 40 years was more or less allowed by those entities. They didn't fight back. They didn't speak for you because, to be honest, they don't want to lose your business, but they're okay to not have it either. So, I kind of forgot where we were going with that particularly, but as far as like regulation and what have you. Yeah, I mean, I see that everywhere I go in this industry. And so, again, that's been an influence into the way that I try to do things. And so then I can kind of see it again within the Bitcoin sphere. Yeah, so I can see how maybe that's what Michael Saylor is. There's probably somebody, right? If not him, then there's definitely somebody. And I'm not knowledgeable enough of the, say, big players in the Bitcoin world to know who's the shill and who's the Fed and who's the, the guy like working in the background. Maybe they're all Feds. Who knows? And in that case,
the only safe assumption is that everyone's a spook, Justin.
Exactly. And if that's true, then then the rifles will end up coming out, and I'm all right. I'll figure it out. So I'm not giving those up either. So.
No, I mean, I think the cool part about Bitcoin is it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what someone like Saylor's motives are, or Brian Armstrong of Coinbase, because it doesn't matter how much Bitcoin you own. You can't control the protocol or the network or the money.
Correct.
Like,
right.
That's the key value prop. The key value prop
Correct.
is it,
Right.
and the metaphor over into the gun industry is like, it doesn't matter that HK doesn't care about selling to civilians. As long as civilians are able to obtain their own firearms somehow, or print them and then train how to use them, it doesn't matter. This one company cannot necessarily control the whole industry. I think on Bitcoin, it's a little bit more, Bitcoin is young. The firearm industry is very old. And there's a lot of, and we see this a lot. We see this a lot, that just our government in general is so intertwined with large corporations.
Yeah.
That's where you start to see like the American libertarian right and the American like Bernie bro left agree on certain things, because one side is anti-government and the other side is anti-corporation, and they're just all intertwined at this point. And you see that in the firearm industry. That is my point. And I start to see that grow into the Bitcoin industry, where we're just so young that these large corporations haven't had enough time to necessarily intertwine themselves with corrupt politicians. But we're starting to get there, and we're starting to see these early signs of that, and Bitcoin is growing up as a result. But it's just something that Bitcoiners, I just wish were a little bit more aware of and a little bit more vocal about. But there's very little financial incentive for public
Yeah,
Bitcoiners to talk about it.
I tell people, like, if you want to turn your super socialist, like universal health care for everybody friend into a pro gun person, have them watch the movie John Q. Right. And so those who haven't seen it, Denzel Washington is the main character. He's the father of a son with a heart condition, finds out that the son needs a heart transplant, but he just lost his job. And so his health insurance company denies him. And so basically he fucking loads up a gun, comes up with a plan, goes to the hospital, and more or less, like, at the beginning, you think he's going to go on a shooting rampage and this is going to be like some kind of vengeance movie. But in reality, what he's doing is setting it up so that he's effectively putting the gun to his own head and holding himself hostage. And basically at the end, like, that's the deal he thinks he's making, is that he's going to kill himself and he's going to donate his own heart to his son to save him. And it doesn't work. Spoiler alert, it doesn't have to go that way at the end. But, I remember watching the movie the first time and thinking, like, oh man, this is like a really leftist movie. Like, these fucking universal healthcare people, they're trying to make it seem like every corporation's bad. Like, and I love that. I watch so many leftist. I've watched every, like, pollution, like, evil DuPont killed people by dumping waste in this river. Like, I've watched literally every leftist framed documentary that you could possibly imagine on corporate malfeasance. I went down to Occupy Wall Street when it was down in Detroit, when I worked for an insurance company at the time. And I remember thinking, like, you guys actually have a lot of you guys have a very salient point, but most of you are like a bunch of socialist college kids that are here sleeping in, like, North Face tents. So, like, how about we just get rid of those guys, and, like, the 20% of you that are actually serious, like, yeah, let's go kick down the door at JP Morgan here and, like, grab some bankers by the necktie and, like, see some real shit. Like, yeah, this is a bad situation. Like, I work for an insurance company. I see how it looks behind the scenes. Like, I know how much money there is here. Like, I see that this is a problem. But then that all got derailed with, wokeism was more or less invented right when Occupy Wall Street was happening, to distract them from the real issue, which was the banks and the multinational corporations. And so then on the pro-gun side, we have exactly the same kind of problem. Like, the gun companies are happy to have regulations that they already have the capital to get around, and taxes that they can afford to pay, and they can pull the ladder up from underneath them. And if there's no way for us to get guns and ammunition, then they can sort of starve us out of existence. And so we have to try to decentralize that to a certain degree as much as we can. And some of that is not feasible because of the scales of industry you need to make things like, say, gunpowder or primers. But there are people in the 3D printed gun community who are working on that, like electronic ignitionless primers, piezoelectric primers. We're working with a company that's using a 3D printed bullet jacket, all kinds of stuff. I mean, there are some problems that are going to be harder to solve than others,
Yep.
for sure. But we're doing as best as, I mean, you can 3D print a suppressor now. I've personally done it. And so, like, the technology is advancing faster than what they can regulate. And that's what we have to keep our eye on the ball. We just have to keep advancing this technology and forcing them to play defense and trying to invent new laws that regulate this and regulate that. And then eventually they come up with some kind of untenable law that everybody looks at and says, this doesn't make any sense. This is way too much government control. Even people who are, like, sort of the normies will look at it and go, wow, that's pretty fucking radical. And if you can get some of those people on your side, now you're making gains, right?
Right. So I'm curious on your opinion, because I mean, before, like, I discovered Bitcoin and the greater open source movement, I would, like, classify myself as, like, a disenfranchised youth. I was like, politicians are corrupt. There's no adults in the room. They're lying to us. Hope is lost, and I see this among my peer group all the time. People I went to college with, people I went to high school with, um, and then I found tools, like actionable change, like actual tools. You don't have to go and lobby a politician. Um, you don't have to go lobby a politician for them to actually do the right thing. You can just take matters into your own hands, use the tools, and have actionable change. Now, in the firearms industry, there is real regulatory pressure. I mean, there's
Certainly.
extremely intense regulatory pressure where they have essentially criminalized certain aspects of using firearms.
Mhm.
How do you like think about the balance of lobbying governments, right? Like, like actually trying to get politicians to pass sane or not do anything. Maybe just don't even touch anything. Just stay out
Right.
of our fucking way versus focusing on the tools, focusing on shipping ammo, focusing on education, focusing on,
Right.
you know, printing and like how do you is there a balance act to you? Are both important or is it
Yeah, they're both definitely important. I think you need to find people who can fill both of those roles separately. So, unfortunately, our industry, we don't have like who's the George Soros of the gun industry? Like we don't have one. I wish we kind of did. Like we don't have a Daddy Warbucks anywhere who's like just like I'll spend $100,000 to like get this DA elected in this town and just like totally fuck everything up. It's like that
right?
guy. Like I wish I had that kind of money. I think some people on our side hope that it's Elon Musk. I'm not so sure about that.
Doubtful.
We'll see. Makes a lot of noise, but I've yet to see anything that I can rely on. I would say the same thing about Trump. A lot of people who voted for Trump, either both time or the first time, thought that there were some things to be had there. But in the end, we didn't really get much out of it. And in the firearms world, what we got was a bump stock ban,
Yep.
which eventually led to this pistol brace situation that we're in. And whether you like Trump or not, look, I will fully admit I voted for him both times. Why? Because I wasn't going to vote for Hillary, and I just, I thought it was going to be hilarious the first time. I didn't think it could possibly happen. But before that, I voted for Ron Paul. I voted for Ron Paul over John McCain.
Yeah.
Over Mitt Romney. Like I was going to vote for those guys. So, yeah, I think the balancing act for me personally, because I don't have the resources to spend money on lobbyists. That's not my arena.
Yeah.
My method is to try to bring back the idea of deterrence, right? Like think about back in the day when you had small cities and your elected representative lived in a very small community. And if they went and voted for a bunch of shit that fucked up your life, they had to come home and sit in the tavern. They had to walk into that tavern and have everybody turn over their shoulder and look at them and be like, what a fucking piece of shit this guy is. Like, can you believe what he did? And we don't really have that anymore. Our politicians are completely, they sit in most cases behind guarded doors. We never see them. They don't really interact with the communities very much, certainly not at the federal level, a little bit more at the state level. So for me, I said, I kind of got sick of the gun community trope of I'm losing all my guns in a boating accident. And I said, okay, well, that's precisely the problem. If they don't think that we're serious, if they think that we're just going to throw all this shit overboard at first sign, then they have no reason to stop doing what they're doing. So rather, how about I keep posting up pictures of 50 to 75,000 rounds of ammunition in one day being shipped out all across the country, and pictures of people's rifles and pictures of guys training in full equipment with night vision and armor plates, and just say, hey, look, guys, the situation is this. We have all this shit and you're not getting it back and you don't know who has it. And this should be deterrence. Like, this should speak enough for you to say it's not a good idea for us to pass any more gun control regulation. And we have to stop hiding in the shadows and we have to be honest about it. And unfortunately, we can't rely on these major corporations to talk that way because it's just not financially there's no financial incentive for them to do so. So I'll try to do it as best I can and try to find other people who will do that along with me, like Maj Toure at Black Guns Matter. That's why I started. I reached out to him years ago and I said, look, man, I don't know what you got planned, but like, let me know how I can help contribute to that, because I think what you're doing is great. And like, you're reaching a crowd I know that I can't reach in a way that I can't speak. So let's figure out a way to work together. Like, because what I do know is that our ideologies are perfectly aligned, and that's good enough for me. So let's find other people who are going to be a bit more, maybe not brazen about what they say, but just honest about the whole thing.
Yeah.
And let that do the talking. Let that be the deterrence.
Well,
right? instead of trying to spend money on lobbyists that I just don't have, right? And I don't trust those people to speak.
Right. I mean, they're just as corrupt, if not more. They're playing the game.
They're just as corrupt, right? 100%.
Can we go just real quickly? Can we go? What is the deal with the Black Guns Matter? I'm not familiar with this.
Mashtre runs like a nonprofit organization called Black Guns Matter, and so he's based out of Philadelphia. Back when I was talking with him originally, he was going across the country, basically teaching free firearms training classes in mostly minority urban communities in LA, Philadelphia, Chicago, all these places where all the crime and murders are, and where it's a very underserved population because most of the time concealed carry permits are expensive, so they can't afford it. They don't have access to training because training. I mean, this is an expensive hobby, right?
Firearms you're literally shooting dollar bills out of your fucking rifle.
Good training is expensive. If you don't have a place to train, which most, Chicago, these cities, they don't have gun ranges. There's no gun range in the city of Detroit. So he was going across the country teaching these free classes, and I said, well, I know you need ammo, so how about we help you with that? And that was kind of the beginnings of it. And he's grown. He's got his own center in Philadelphia now where they do all kinds of like life skills lessons in addition to just teaching shooting classes. That led me into a whole other group of people who are doing similar things in various communities that I know personally I'm not as well equipped to speak to. So that for me is like, that's where I spend my lobbying money in a way, is like,
that's awesome.
Like that's my version of lobbying, because I don't have the money to affect anything in DC, but I can donate 40,000 rounds of ammo to a group in Detroit who taught 1,000 women over 48 hours on a weekend some simple firearms instruction, and kind of got them into the bug of owning a gun and being able to be their own protector. And that for me was an extremely powerful event, very emotional. It was a world that I just, not really, you don't really have a lot of exposure to like the female side of the firearms community from a consumer standpoint, of like what it means to those people that I can't really understand because I'm not one. So that to me, I'm getting the benefit of doing some soft marketing, but also I'm getting the intrinsic and altruistic benefits of advancing the cause. And I'm finding people who can do that for me, but again, at the grassroots level. Like,
that's actionable change. That's real change.
Yeah, those are my communities. That's closer to home for me than donating money to some large political organization that, only so much of that money is going to get spent on real activism. I mean, look at the NRA. Look at how much money they get in versus how much is actually spent doing useful shit. Very little.
Well, the NRA is a corrupt, regulatory captured organization, but and freaks, don't donate to politicians. You're just wasting your money, and they're just going to put you on a fundraising list forever. Justin, this has been awesome. I've really appreciated the conversation. I will say one more time that I really appreciate the product and that you offer it. I know it can be frustrating sometimes that other peers in your industry haven't accepted Bitcoin, but this is my thesis. My thesis has always been that like the small challenger that's trying to do things different is the first to adopt Bitcoin, right? Like Venmo didn't adopt Bitcoin first, like Cash App adopted Bitcoin first and forced their hand. Apple didn't adopt Bitcoin. They haven't adopted Bitcoin yet, but like Microsoft started accepting Bitcoin, right? You see the challengers do it first. I want to see I expect small businesses to do it first. And just seeing you actually accept it with Bitcoin, with BTCPayServer, just sovereign Bitcoin ownership is fucking awesome. And at the end of the day, like it'd be nice to have more ammo suppliers that accept Bitcoin, but if it's only you for the meantime, like your product's amazing, so
that's okay. Yeah, I mean,
the job done.
To me, it made sense, and it like I've spent a lot of time thinking about other ways to try to make it more anonymous. Like, unfortunately, we're shipping a physical product, and it can only be shipped to it can't be shipped to a PO box, right? And so there's some level of anonymity that simply can't be solved with an online business in that way. But I thought, like, imagine a decentralized version of Amazon Prime delivery, right? Where like you give the guy the box and then
they're close with the Amazon boxes. They're just a surveillance company, so it's like
Well, right. Like I
Yeah.
imagine Whirlpool, but with your your ammo shipments.
Well,
Like
my
they
real dream is like the onion routed drones. So it's like one drone drops
okay,
off to
yeah,
another
sure,
drone. Another thing I tell
work, yeah,
freaks, another thing I call my audience freaks, by the way.
freaks, sure,
Another thing I tell them is like if you're renting a house, I say this with Bitcoin hardware, but if you're renting a house, get a bunch of stuff shipped to the house right before your lease ends. You're about to leave
sure,
anyway.
yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah,
Um, just something to keep in mind. But I mean, I think part of what is also cool about the firearms industry is that there's still a lot of mom and pop. It's because of like regulatory stuff, but like there's still a lot of mom and pop small gun stores. It's like one of the last bastions of like small
yeah,
business in America.
I agree.
Also, just like quality product. Like American companies don't make quality product anymore, except in the firearms industry. You still see like product that should outlive us, right? Like not something that just
Yeah,
dies in 6 years. Like there's like you're starting to see the early stages of like the fiat economy
yeah.
come into it
Planned
or whatever.
obsolescence, you could
Yeah.
say. Yeah, to a degree. I mean, but at the end of the day, again, it's like it has to work every time. And so,
Yeah.
you might be annoyed that, you bought a Glock 43 and then the 43X came out 6 months later. You're like,
Yeah.
fuck. Like, why did you guys even sell this? This is so stupid. Like, why didn't you just now I gotta buy it doesn't use the same magazine. This is bullshit. This was planned obsolescence by Glock. Like, okay, maybe it was, maybe it wasn't, but the thing still works. I mean,
Yeah, the
like,
thing will
I'll
work
take a
for a
Glock,
decade and
yeah,
more,
I'll take a Glock 43 in the hand over a slingshot. Like, if you don't
Yeah.
think so, go ahead and stand in front of it. Like I said, like that's the joke. Everybody makes fun of the caliber they hate, 22 or 380 or 38 special or whatever. It's a boomer caliber. It's for the fuds. It's like, but at the end of the day, when somebody points a barrel at you, A, you don't really know what the caliber is, and B, there isn't a single person that's going to stand in front and get shot by a 380. So it's
Yeah.
I like to play in those jokes and those memes, but it's a very serious product in a very serious industry. So
Exactly.
yeah, there's
Um,
um,
well, anyway, Justin, it's been a fucking pleasure. Before we wrap up, I'd like to end with final thoughts. I'd like to put a little spice on the final thoughts for this one. First of all, I want you to answer my question of if a freak has never fired a gun before and they live in a non-cucked American state that allows them to actually use firearms, what would be your advice? And then second, wrap us with some final thoughts.
Sure. So I would say for most people, due again to like different regulations and laws in your area and just the nature of like where you would most typically probably have to actually use a firearm. Um, I would concentrate on getting really good with a handgun. There's a lot of training available out there. Most of the big name training companies are extremely accepting. Even with basic equipment, you can go take an 8-hour training class and you will go from knowing absolutely nothing to knowing like 50 to 60% of like you won't even be able to believe it. You'll be so much better and so much more confident. I would warn you to get sucked into the typical path of the gun owner, which is you buy a gun and you shoot at indoor ranges. I know a lot of good indoor ranges and good owners, but the problem is you just can't do the things there that are going to really make you good at what you might have to do in real life. Drawing
In the
from
real life, you're not going to be just standing in a lane shooting at a paper
exactly,
target.
like right. It builds. I think that they build bad habits. There's a table in front of you where you can, kind of like put the gun, like take the mag. Like you need to get used to doing these things in the environment where you might need to do them. So the best place to do that is at an outdoor range. We need to keep these outdoor ranges alive. Most of these clubs have been around for 100 years. The population is built up around them, and so the minute that they have a lawsuit or they have not enough members to pay the bills, the land is going to get bought by a developer, and we're never going to have outdoor ranges ever again because they're getting zoned out of existence. So I would recommend you join a local. Most of them it's like $200 a year, and
Super
so
cheap. Yeah.
even if you don't use it, like you're doing more by contributing that $200 to that outdoor range than you would be giving that $200 to the NRA or any politician or something like that. And I would also say I would very strongly encourage you to look into basic competition shooting with a handgun. In particular, IDPA, I think, is the most approachable of the two. And while you may have no interest, you may have no competitive bone in your body, look at it instead as 2 or 3 hours of practice time on the range where you're doing realistic things with your weapon. You're manipulating it as it goes empty. You're being forced to shoot at challenging targets. And it's something that you can measure as well. If you do that for a season, you will see by the end of the season how much better of a shooter you are. You'll be around very good shooters, people who will help you for free. You'll get a chance to see other people's equipment where you can see what works and what doesn't, what works and is cheap and still affordable, and what works and might be a little bit more expensive, but someday you can afford if it becomes a hobby that you want to do. So I found that they're some of the most enjoyable people to be around on a Saturday or a Sunday. You can still go to church, go to a barbecue, do all the other things that you might do in your life. But I personally, again, as somebody who's like 38 years old and has a bunch of hobbies, I find it hard to make adult friends. I'm not really like a bar guy. I'm actually kind of an introvert by nature. So I don't really like those kinds of social scenes. So I'd much rather be someplace where, everybody is running around with guns. So there's a certain level of respect that I just love about being around those sorts of people. And it's a chance to make some good friends. I've made great business relationships there. So yeah, that's what I would encourage somebody. Like, that may be too much for you to think about. Like, you may just be thinking about like, well, what the hell kind of gun should I buy? And like, that's okay. Honestly, I would say the same thing. Like, go to a competition shooting match and just watch. They won't charge you. Just hang out for a bit, have some conversations. And I think that will be better for you than me telling you to go to an indoor range and shoot like 5 different guns. You could go do that for free at a competition. Guys will let you shoot their guns for free. And you can actually see like what people buy in the real world versus like what the gun store guy is going to sell you because he thinks you can afford it, or because he thinks, a woman is not capable of operating a magazine fed handgun. So you get sold a revolver that is like the absolute worst possible thing you could buy. Get around people who do this as a serious competition. I see somebody in the comments mentioned steel target. That's actually probably the easiest thing to start with because there's no moving. You're standing in a fixed point and you're shooting targets for time, but there isn't movement involved. So that's like basic, core, simple, just to get the idea of like shooting quickly and hitting small targets. That's an even easier way to start. So that's my advice.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, I think word of the day, overlap. Like, the worst thing you can do, right, is just buy a gun and just maybe stack some ammo and just like leave it in your basement and never fucking touch it until you actually need it. And then at that point, you're fucked. Same with Bitcoin. Don't just buy Bitcoin, leave it on an exchange, never think about it, and then 5 years when you need Bitcoin, not know how to use it because you're going to be fucked in that situation.
That's a Bitcoin person who has a non-custodial Coinbase wallet, and just they're always the people that are buying when it's high and selling when it's low, right?
Yeah.
And
they don't know how to use it if there's government pressure or any kind of fucking pressure whatsoever, and they're just they'll freak out and panic, and that's like the worst case scenario. Justin, this was a fucking pleasure. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Keep doing what you're doing. We all appreciate you. Well, I definitely appreciate you, but I think a lot of people appreciate you, and there's a lot of mutual respect there. So thank you, and a huge shout out to the Freaks for joining us again for another live show. Thank you for joining us in the live chat. To all you Freaks who came in from YouTube or Twitch or our Matrix chat, thank you. Thank you to everyone who supports the show. There'll be another dispatch tomorrow with Christian Carol's CK from BTC Magazine. We're going to do a debrief on the conference tomorrow at 2 p.m. Eastern. I don't know what time UTC that is. It's been a long day. But thank you, Justin, for joining us, and thanks, Freaks. Cheers.
My pleasure. Thanks, guys.
Stay humble and stack gats.